This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy, and hit the road, little boy. Rahm Emanuel, Tiny Dancer, gone. Focus on pirouetting out of our lives over the next 8 months, finally.
Maybe you can go back to the ballet.
Tiny Dancer with his significant other, Amy Rule, at the dais yesterday. I had this to say.
As much as I love this job and will always love this city and its residents, I've decided not to seek reelection.
And applause went up around the city. The difference here,
yes,
as compared to other watershed moments in, say, the last 100 years of Chicago politics with respect to the mayor, it's not a death like Richard J. Daley. It's maybe a little bit similar to Richard M. in terms of being forced out by unpopularity. But I think the smart money at the time was he could have still won re-election. He wanted to get out from underneath all the problems that he created, worsened, metastasized under him, that he then handed off to Tiny Dancer. The Tiny Dancer is getting pushed out, not by insiders. He's getting pushed out by the people.
Oh, he said, he's doing this because he wants to spend more time with his family, even though his family is gone.
For the last 7.5 years, I've given my all every day and left everything on the field. This commitment has required significant sacrifice all around. Now with our 3 children in college, Amy and I have decided it's time to write another chapter together.
When he talks about his family, he's talking about his family at Goldman Sachs, at GTCR, at Morgan Stanley, that family.
Politicians always say they're going to leave public office to spend more time with their family. My children were smart enough to see that coming, and they scattered to the 2 coasts.
Yeah, well, the one kid had to get out of town ahead of being arrested for being a drug dealer. Allegedly. I mean, we don't know.
Please.
We don't know because the...
I'm not going to say a word.
Because the cameras...
Well, they just were inconveniently not working that day.
Right. The one on the CTA platform wasn't working. The one...
that Hermitage and
Street
Berteau, for
working.
some reason, was out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Allegedly, that was the case. I mean, we don't know.
He did get his tooth knocked out. I mean, it was pretty bad assault. Got to pay the drug dealers.
Well, drug deals go bad. Sometimes they go violent.
Oh, yeah.
And also, don't forget, Tiny Dancer said, as a way to address street crime, take it to the alleys. So that's what they did. For more on this topic, John Kass from Chicago Tribune has written a column on it. Lord of the Flies on LaSalle Street, says John Kass. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Danny. Hello, Amy.
Hi.
So, Lord of the Flies on LaSalle Street, what do you mean?
Look, now that he's out, and good call on that because he's forced out by circumstances. You said earlier that he doesn't want to wear the jacket for Laquan, and that's exactly what would happen, and that forced him out. But now that he's gone, you see Tony Preckwinkle, Bill Daley, Mendoza, Ricky. They're all crawling. It's Lord of the Flies. They're all like crawling over the city now.
Well,
who's Piggy?
Yeah.
Well, who's
Piggy, Dan?
Well, who is most likely to get to the conch shell?
Yeah. Listen, they're all crawling all over the city now. I listened to Ballas earlier. They didn't have the guts to run earlier. Now they're running, or they're talking about it.
Well, who's they? Give us
city.
some big names.
I put some in the column. Dan mentioned it. Mentioned people he's heard about. Tony Preckwinkle, Billy Daley, Susanna Mendoza, Ricky Munoz. I don't know why he'd be running. They didn't have the guts to run a Latino candidate when Rahm was in office, and now that he's abdicated or is leaving the race, now there'll be a Latino candidate. It's all a joke.
Well, but, I mean, if there was no Latino candidate on this landscape, I mean, it would show incredible weakness, wouldn't it? I mean, I'm surprised there wasn't one previously, but certainly if there wasn't Latino representation in the race now, it would just make that community look weak politically, wouldn't it?
Well, perhaps, but the community looked pretty weak when they were running 5'6" little Jewish guy with 9.5 fingers as their Latino candidate.
Yeah, that's
right?
true too. Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah.
So in his,
what do you guys think?
Well, in his years,
think?
what do I think? I'm
Yeah.
supporting Paul Vallis. That's what I don't think. That's what I know, and I'm going to put yard signs up everywhere I possibly can. Spread the word about him. What about you, John Kass? Who are you?
I don't. I support no one. I'm a journalist. I'm not Chuck Todd. I'm not a staffer, a Democratic staffer, blaming Roger Ailes for everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Ridiculous.
But so on the mayor's race, so the prospects of Preckwinkle, for example.
I mean,
Bill
nauseous.
Daley. Are you serious? Bill Daley couldn't go the distance with Pat Quinn. That seems to me like, and the idea that people want to go back to a Daley at this point. What about somebody who would be a new face with an old name?
Dan Proft.
No, new face with an old name, only known to insiders like Jerry Joyce's kid.
Oh yeah, son of Kaiser Sosa. Yeah, why not?
Exactly. Well, but tell people who this is because he's in the race right now.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago, I did a podcast on the Chicago Way saying Rahm might drop out because of Laquan, and the week before I mentioned Kaiser Sosa's kid, Jerry Joyce, who's running. I don't know why. Why would Jerry Joyce want his kid to run unless it's like, I'm going to stake a claim on this piece of the electorate, I guess white Southwest Siders, coppers from 19th Ward, and what are you going to give me to get out, to the other candidates? There's a lot of that going on in politics, Dan. You touch on it when you discuss politics, the inside game, but right now we're going to see a lot of that.
So
a lot of posturing.
Yes.
And what are you going to give me not to get in?
Right, and so Joyce, your take is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joyce doesn't have a chance to win. This is a spoiler. This is a, like you say, looking for the quid pro quo. Give me that airport concession contract back and I won't run.
Right, exactly. That's how I see it. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm a little cynical, but I've only been covering Chicago politics for like 2,000 years now.
Yeah, right.
Well, do you think Mayor Emanuel is going to cut a deal with someone to take his place, and he's going to support someone publicly?
Well, Charlie Rose is in trouble now. He doesn't have a TV show to pull that kind of little bait and switch business they did with Daley's and Obama. But in this case, I'd say that any candidate who thinks that Rahm's $10 million, he's not going to use that $10 million, or at least some of it, to affect the outcome by still dropping Oppo research that he's got and other stuff, they're wrong. Because Rahm, if he has any kind of future, which I doubt, in politics, he'll have to have a base.
Well, so
he'll try to affect the outcome.
Well, so what?
Try to affect the outcome.
What about Obama, who's in town to accept a government ethics award from U of I? So that's the genuflecting before the political Christ figure in this state continues. What about Obama's influence here? Why wouldn't another Obama acolyte, if you will, enter this race, and Obama can back that person, Valerie Jarrett, I don't know, Melody Hobson, somebody like that, and Arnie Duncan and swamp the field. What about that?
I did mention that, interestingly enough, in today's column in the Chicago Tribune. And all Obama really has to do is what he always does, take some clay, mold it in the shape of an Obama-like figure, and then blow on it and make it real.
Well, what do you think that the prospects are? I mean, look, Arnie Duncan was a dutiful rebounder for all those years.
All he does is play basketball. He goes from gym to gym and plays hoops.
Yeah, what about a reward for that dope?
Yeah, a reward for boxing out, doing the rebounding and passing to Obama?
Yeah,
make him mayor, sure. Why not? I mean, we're building a temple of love to this guy, $500 million temple of love. Why not do that? I think it's interesting that he could not, one thing I was thinking about, Rahm had so much trouble with African Americans, and I didn't see Obama come forward at all in this kind of chaos period, the Laquan McDonald period, saying, hey, Rahm, I've got your back. I'm standing with Rahm. I'm endorsing Rahm. There was none of that. You notice that? It's what's not. It's what they don't do and what they don't say, as Dan Proft often says. That's also indicative.
Hey, did Mayor?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, did Mayor Emanuel accomplish anything in his time as mayor besides extending the school day?
Yeah, got to built that DePaul, that basketball stadium that nobody goes to
that we don't need.
to not watch DePaul play.
Yeah.
But just think of this: by not building the DePaul arena where it should be, there was a lot of development that Brian Hopkins, Daley's alderman that was drawn into the map, could administer, right? So he did accomplish some stuff.
Well,
but as to large, remember we don't need cops. He kept sending Gary McCarthy out. We don't need cops. We don't need cops. We don't need cops. Right? Well, I think we did need cops, and we did need a lot of them, and they didn't do it.
I mean,
so how's that?
You know, we were talking about Jerry Joyce's Kid, and you're talking about some of these inside players and these daily holdovers, and some of those on the city council as well. But do we overstate the substance of the machine in 2018? I mean, Jerry Joyce, Daley, can they really rig an election like they used to be able to? Can they really pick their candidate like they used to? Or are there people that can come in from the outside and through social media, their own fundraising sources, take on anybody that a Daley or a Rahm or maybe even an Obama would back?
I think that most of the political media in Chicago, it has reverence for that band of thugs and gangsters called the Chicago Machine. And I think it's similar to Washington media having reverence for the establishment, hence the genuflecting over the McCain funeral, right, where they talked about how great it was when people reached across the aisle. But mostly, I think in some sad respect, most of us in journalism are not iconoclasts, but we're more like gatekeepers. But that said, there are maybe 3 or 4, 5 wards that could deliver something. And if Susana Mendoza gets in the race, Madigan could influence those few wards in a large turnout, perhaps help her there. Outside of that, Madigan's like 7,000 years old. Sooner or later, Methuselah has to go. And all that's changing too.
Well,
the changes you'll see is in the city council. Pat O'Connor's probably not going to run. All these old timers are like, "Hey, I'm done."
Will Ed Burke reconsider running again?
Oh.
I don't know. How many times do you want to see Ed Burke with sombrero standing next to what are those bands called? You know, those
mariachi
bands.
Yeah, as many times as he'll do it. I love watching politicians defile themselves.
I don't know.
But so there is a changing of the guard that's happening. I think Madigan's a short-termer as well. Ed Burke's a short-termer. The question is there any prospect that changing of the guard will mean a new day in Chicago and not just the same day with new faces?
Yeah, I think so. Ironically enough, Paul Vallis has been around a long time as a technocrat. He's not representative of, as Amy says, of that old school thing. Not at all, because they really hated him. I remember Vallis when he got bounced out of City Hall, and they sent him to the Chicago public schools. Daley wanted him to die there. He didn't want him to succeed. And he sent him there because Vallis kept asking the one question: why are we buying all this salt from Melrose Park?
Yeah.
and Pat Hewells, the alderman, comes up to me at City Hall and says, "Hey, what's with the Greek asking these questions about the salt from Melrose Park?" I go, "I don't know. I'm not in the meeting."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well, sort of some.
Where's the Republican Party, Dan?
Yeah, Dan.
Let's see. You've got Tiny Dancer, who's already reserved the Valerie Jarrett suite at the Ronners compound in the Amalfi Coast, where they're going to reconstitute the wine club in a couple of months. So that's in the offing. Otherwise, I don't know. Where is the Republican Party? Do you see one? John? I mean, I think the interesting thing of just one more point. The interesting thing is actually the signs of life for the Republican Party, not in the suburbs so much, where the party needs to be strong if it's ever going to be a majority party, but places like the Northwest Side, where there's new people that have come in to constitute an organization, and they're running candidates, and they're challenging socialists like John Arena. So it's interesting. The toughest landscape is where you see signs of life for the GOP. So maybe there is for the city more so than the state, ironically.
And remember this, Amy, there was a guy who ran for governor and said famously, I was born a poor black child.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yeah, I love that guy.
I still think Dan Proft, Dan, you should think about it, man.
All right.
A platform like cyclone fences for everybody. Something like that.
Exactly. I got friends I want to make rich, too. Why can't I run?
That's the
There
point.
you go. Just be
Oh,
honest.
gosh. All right. John Kass, Chicago Tribune columnist extraordinaire. Check out his most recent offering, Lord of the Flies on LaSalle Street in the Tribune. John, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's going to get crazy around here. Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Mr. Proft, your response.
Yeah, like everybody else, I was born a poor black child, too.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.